I kind of feel like I've once again fallen into the trap of casting the same dozen or so pro gamers over and over and over again. So today, it's time for a long, drawn-out macro game of Terran versus Protoss, where we find ourselves on a Blackburn. Spotting right here in the bottom left corner with the yellow SCVs from South Korea. We have KeeN, and his opponent in the bottom right, playing with the red Protoss probes from France. We are looking at DnS's main nexus. Alrighty, so this particular game is from the recent Casters Civil War. I don't know this game, I haven't seen it yet, but it's one of the absolute longest games as far as like the replay file size goes from the particular event. So what I did is I put all of the replays in one big folder, and then I sorted them on size, and I think that this one is like the second biggest one. There's also a Protoss versus Zerg between Raynor and, I believe, Nice, if I'm not mistaken. If I were to make an assumption, though, I think that one's going to be based all around Skytles. I mean, maybe this one will be as well. Interestingly enough, I mean, I obviously don't have a very large sample size, right? But it feels to me that while in the previous multiplayer balance patch, we saw a lot of Skytles against Zerg, it seems that we're seeing more Skytles against Terran these days. I mean, obviously, I have not, you know, seen nearly as many games as there are being played, right? Because that's practically impossible, but the long drawn-out macro games that feature Skytles seem to have recently been pretty much all against, against Terran. Anyways, one of the reasons for that, of course, is that, I mean, it's not a big deal, because you can still finish up the wall off right here with a supply. I don't like it, KeeN. Can you do it in a conventional way? KeeN, can you put the barracks right over there and then build the reactor over there and then finish up the wall up with a supply depot right over there? He could still definitely finish off this wall off, no problema whatsoever. A little bit different than what we normally see. Probably shouldn't bother me as much as it does. Yeah. This is definitely not as optimal. Because units are going to have to go. It's really not a big deal. I guess he's still going to be able to lock those probes in the main base for now. Or I guess, you know, singular. The one probe right over here. Oh, there you go. Anyways, what was I saying? Before I got so rudely interrupted right here by that reactor placement. I was saying something about a late game Skytles mostly being played about. Oh, yeah. So I think the main reason for that is that Terran players recently have really been turtling hard. So if I were to make a prediction about this game, and again, I haven't seen it, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna see Mr. KeeN probably playing that Maru-esque style, where he just simply defends, and then he builds a bunch of structures over here, and then maybe a planetary in the choke, or like right over there, and, you know, and we're not really gonna see a whole lot of potential for DnS to go in with a ground army, and I think that's usually the point at which Protoss start switching towards, well, carriers and Tempest, and sometimes even a Mothership and all that too. Anyhow, in case you're unfamiliar, DnS, he's on Root Gaming. He's been playing this game forever. I just looked it up, actually. His very first pro game that's recorded in a tournament is from the 22nd of May in 2012. So that's a little while ago. Interestingly enough, KeeN's very first game is even longer ago. That was on the 15th of November in 2010. So both of these guys have basically been playing this game for probably more than half their lives. Maybe not quite, but, you know, close to it anyways. Significant portion of their life has been StarCraft 2, and while, I mean, KeeN, he's a very good player, right? He hasn't really found as much success as some of those other top-tier Terrans that, you know, I cast regularly from South Korea. He's definitely not someone to underestimate. So he is on the Kwangdong Freaks team, which you may be familiar with. They changed their name like a dozen times, but they're known as the Freaks. Other players on that team are guys like, for example, Trap and Sue. TY used to be on there too, and so did Stats. Stats actually just tweeted earlier this morning. I also retweeted it on my Twitter in case you want to go check it out. That's twitter.com/LowkoTV. He mentioned that he has about a half year remaining on his mandatory military service, but he does plan on coming back, which is exciting. Stats, one of the all-time greatest Protoss players, so I always like hearing that. If TY decides to come back, I just looked that up. He started up his mandatory service about 2 months after Stats. So I guess, yeah, we may very well see him coming back in about 8 months' time. So around the end of the year, early 2023. Obviously, it's hard to predict the future, but it'll be nice. It's always good to see players coming back. Let's see. Okay, one SCV over here gets killed. The Adepts, though, are already halfway across the map once more. He's decided to go for a pretty quick third Nexus over here. Phoenixes are just roaming this section of the map, making sure there's no flyers here from the Terran escaping. And so far, I mean, there's none of those out yet. We are going to be able to go into the double starport, or I guess the double medevac production here for now. Making 2 of those units out of the starport at once. He wants to try and come in and see if he can snipe them. There's already a pretty marauder-heavy focus right here from KeeN, though, so... Wouldn't be surprised if he goes for a bit of a move out here in a little bit. We have the classical stimp pack, combat shield, +1 infantry weapons. And while he's taking a bit of a different road getting there, all of the Terran roads eventually lead to, well, Marine Marauder medevac, right? It's what we've been seeing for a very long time, okay. He really wants to get that stimp pack, though, is done. So he's going to be able to save that medevac. Easy peasy. At the same time, though, Jimmy and the squad have made their way towards the top right-hand corner. Now... This is a, more than likely a one-way trip. It's a little bit sad. Let's see how much damage they can actually deal. There's gonna be a Colossus out in a little bit, okay? They've used their combat drugs and they're gonna start gunning down the probes. This is one of those moves we don't see regularly. 8 workers. No, dude. No. Don't sack him. Just go. Alright, he probably wants to kill a sentry or whatever if he really can, but... Okay. No. He's like, no, guys. It's a one-way trip. I'm sorry. Probably could have walked you back. He's trying to poke and prod as well at the other side right there with his main army. Just buying a little bit of time, though. And he actually kills 11 workers. That was far more successful than I thought it was going to be. So, Phoenix is into Colossi. It is a very popular way of playing. It's very strong. The problem is that you have a Colossus, which is great and all, but it can only be in one place at once, right? So, if the units are split, it can actually be quite annoying. Normally on Blackburn, it seems quite hard to... Hello. Alright, to split those units. Just because you only really have this pathway right over here. And then I guess, the fight from the top. Not something we normally see, but that was kind of cool right there. From KeeN. Even though those Marines, they didn't make it back home. They did, well, kill quite a few workers right there from our Protoss player, which is nice. Alright, 3rd command center coming up as well. It seems that most of the time that we see, like, late game Skytles these days, it mostly comes down from the Terran player forcing the game to go in that direction. So, yeah, I don't think Protoss really want to transition there, but they don't really have much of an option if Terran decides to sit there and turtle up. Anyhow, I think that's probably what's going to happen. I don't know. We're going to find out. This really looks funny to me. Please tell me I'm not crazy. This looks weird, right? We never really... Like, we see the exact same wall off with the exact same structures, but now there's a little bit more space right over there and units that want to come out of the main. Look at this SCV. That's like a second of its life that was wasted, okay? It could have gone straight down that side. Anyhow. Ghost Academy already out. He's going to be able to pump out those workers and... Those ghosts. 2 at a time. Good save right there, Lowko. He's going to be able to pump out the workers even 3 at a time if he builds them out of all of the command centers. Good caster save by me. Alright, Widowmine right there gets killed in the middle of the map. And both players are just happily macroing up. Yeah, so... Extended thermal lens coming up here for DnS. It's going to allow him to get some additional range on those Colossi. You can't really use them offensively as well without the ranged upgrade. But this is actually a moment at which you can definitely go, yeah, for a proper fight. It's going to give those Colossi additional range. One thing you have to keep in mind here is that Terran can go and send the units into the main base. That's why those Phoenixes are hanging out right over there. Already, though, top right-hand corner. Another Nexus is being acquired that just got scouted here by a Liberator as well. That's on its way to start harassing the 3rd base. I'd love to see the Phoenixes move a little bit. Oh, they're going to go to the net instead. Okay. This does now open up the opportunity to go for a potential drop in the main base, but I really don't expect that to happen. Terran already moving through the center of the map, trying to see if maybe it can go after the 4th base here of the Protoss player. Speaking of 4th bases, command center here building already for KeeN. Okay. Now the Terran armies, though, are big enough to be split up once more. Most of the time when we see Terran splitting up their armies, they go for, medevac drops and all that. But KeeN apparently just walking them. There's only one medevac here, not enough space anyways. Okay, there's another medevac joining in. At the very least, giving the potential for this army to go towards the high ground. Disruptor is scanned, shouldn't do any damage. Wouldn't mind seeing that Terran army knock down some of those rocks. He really wants to go into the bases, however, okay. very deep run-in over here. Ay, this seems kind of wild to me. Where's that bio? Okay, there's the bio-killing army right there from Protoss. Needs to be a little bit closer. He was anticipating this army to come in to the 4th base, but honestly, as chaotic as this is, this shouldn't be that effective, should it be? KeeN's army movement is actually really sick. Not something that we normally see from the top-tier Terrans. Another 13 probes end up going down. That's actually pretty good. He does lose the Medivacs. Okay, well, that's a choke point and a half. Absolutely no way for those Terran units to escape right over there. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be a Marine in Mr. KeeN's army. He seems to be rather careless with them, but he has killed 30 probes right now in the process, though, and that is, yeah, certainly significant. All right, 4th Command Center flying on over towards the 4th base location. And once more, we have a drop right now in the top right-hand corner. Terran splitting up his army. DnS thinking, okay, I've done a fair bit of damage, though, to my opponent's force. Okay, he's going to be forced to recall. He was thinking about going for a counterattack, but decides to be a little bit safer and, yeah, just recalls. That being said, there are still Stalkers here available, too. Boost was already used on those Medivacs to get on out of there. My god. This man is relentless with his bio units. It's a one-way trip for all of his units so far. Has there been a single unit that made it back home? I'm pretty sure there hasn't been a single Terran unit that made it back home. Maybe, I'm not sure. Okay, this Medivac. He's gonna be one of the first at the very least. That's not gonna happen, buddy. Needed to burrow that a little bit further away. Alright, the leftover Phoenixes from earlier are gonna start patrolling back and forth at the 6 o'clock. Just ready to intercept any of those Medivac drops if they once more decide to come out. Disruptors being built 2 at a time, but yeah, this is where Terran starts up that turtle, right? So look at that. The wall-off over here at the front, missile turret, siege tanks in the back. We have a sensor tower over here too, and this is only the beginning. So I think indeed that this is a correct moment to go for that fleet beacon and to start adding on additional stargates. You could still harass, though, from the other angle. So we've seen most of the turtle type of games on either Hardwire or Blackburn for very similar reasons. They're a little different, I suppose. On Hardwire, you can relatively easily expand. On this map, you can relatively easily defend. So there's only a few entrances into the Terran bases right now. I mean, you can go through the rocks over here, but this choke point, rather tight. You can obviously go all the way around, but also that is a long way. And obviously Protoss units aren't that fast, so Zealot run-bys and stuff work well in that direction. But there's a sensor tower over here, so KeeN knows that it's coming. He's already sending units over in that direction. And then obviously there's the main attack path that we already looked at, but that one's being established right now by the Terran player with a bunch of structures. So like he's purposefully leaving gaps over here in those wall-offs to make it... Okay, I don't know why there's 2 sensor towers. Anyways, to make it so that the units charge through those choke points and siege tanks, and, you know, the Terran army can deal maximum amount of damage. There's a lot of room for EMP over here to just, yeah, hit those funneled Protoss units if they were to engage over here. So instead, DnS... making the smart choice, decides to go additional Stargates, decides to go into a bunch of carriers over here. +1 flyer attacks are coming up. He's still researching the ground attacks as well and the ground armor, which is fantastic. But he's mostly just allowing, yeah, the Terran to do whatever they like. Because there's not really a whole lot he can do to try and break this. I mean, you can go in there with Disruptors. So Disruptors can kill structures. It's just that obviously the siege tank range is very, very large. And yeah, it's just not an optimal way of playing. Alright, so what exactly do you do here as Terran? He should realize at this point that there's... Yeah, okay, he did scan the main base, so he did indeed realize that there is going to be that Skytools transition coming up. Fleet Beacon, or the Terran Fleet Beacon coming up, the Fusion Core. He's going to start adding on Liberators, +1 flyer attacks as well here for Protoss. And he's just trying to just, yeah, build up his ultimate army. Okay, so we're going to see... what seems to be 2 death balls. One Protoss death ball and then one Terran death ball where... yeah, this reminds me a little bit of like early days StarCraft, but then at a much higher level. In the early days of StarCraft 2, we saw players basically sitting back for like 20 minutes, making their ultimate army and then clashing once. Those games got kind of boring after you casted a dozen of them, because they were all very similar. In this particular case, though, it looks like we've got ourselves... a much more action-packed version of that, but it still kind of leads in that direction eventually. So one Marine over here. Jimmy reincarnated. Alright. Once again, brutally murdered. He's maxed out, so he actually wants to get rid of some of those units right now, too. I mean, you don't want to just give them away, but he probably wants to replace them with some flyers. How many starports are we on? 2. I would actually not mind seeing a couple more starports added into the mix. No, he decides to replace with Marines. I think this is the moment to add on starports. Am I crazy? Anyhow, my god. Dude, KeeN's army movement is so aggressive with the bio. It's kind of wild. So normally when you throw away armies like that, Protoss will be able to punish you, right? Because sure, you can do a lot of damage, so you can go, you know, kill your opponent's economy. But if then you can't hold the counterattack, it's not ideal. The thing here, though, is that this Protoss army is slow as hell. It's gonna take a while for them to move across, and by then, I guess, if you wanted to remax on those Marines, it's gonna be back. Plus, of course, he's buying a lot of time right here just with the Sim City and the way that he's set up. It's very, very hard to break. Yeah, missile turrets coming up. I mean, this isn't even really turtled that hard yet. But imagine you, yeah, exactly, see some additional missile turrets over here as well. Alright, so the last couple games that I've seen on this map that are similar to this, they all come down to the bases at the 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock. Actually, one of my favorite dynamics on Blackburn. So, these two bases, if you were to draw like a vertical line through the center of the minimap, you can imagine that they're not really necessarily either of these two players' base, right? So it's not like the 12 o'clock is the Terrans and the 6 o'clock is the Protoss. Not how it works. I would actually really like to see an emphasis on players trying to... Ooh, there's a hole in the mineral field. I would like to see an emphasis from both players to start taking that one, because I really feel like that's going to be one of the more important ones to aim for. Once you get to this point where you're maxed out, we never see this. And this is just a theory of mine, but I really feel like rather than focusing on this base first, it would make a lot of sense for the players to try and obtain one of those harder to mine bases that are going to be more accessible later on into the game, but for now are actually quite hard to gather. Fun fact, apparently. The Widow Mine deals enough damage to get rid of the shields and 10 health on a carrier. Obviously, the shields are going to regenerate pretty quick, no? I didn't know that. I am personally, if I'm being honest, I'm not very, let me put it like this. I'm not very, ooh, tactical nuke. I'm not very keen. Haha. I came up with a joke. Oh my god. Did the Dark Templar just kill a cloaked ghost? Alright. Trying to play him with his own tricks. I'm not very keen on the Turtle Terran style that we've been seeing over the last, I want to say half a year or so. Maybe less than that. Like when Maru first started doing it, it was fun to watch because it wasn't really something we've seen before. But now it seems that, like, the average ladder hero is also kind of doing the same thing. Now, obviously, KeeN is much better than the average ladder hero. Don't get me wrong. But not a huge fan of this becoming, like, one of the go-to standards. You know what I mean? All right. You know what I mean? Where, like, the guys are just kind of sitting back there making, you know, an ultimate army and then eventually going from their home, and then, you know, they will finally fight when they're very happy with the force that they've got. Yeah, it's fun to see every once in a while, but, like, if it gets worse from here and we're gonna see it even more frequently, that would kind of suck. Now, okay, there's enough Vikings at this point to, like, almost start one-shotting those carriers. Nice movement here, though, by DnS, keeping the majority of those heavy hitters alive. I like this, focusing on this base first. Yeah, I think what DnS is doing makes a lot of sense. Rather than going for the base down south, he could acquire this one later. This doesn't really strike me as a Terran army that... Okay, well, you do need to have an army over there. This doesn't really strike me as a Terran force that's gonna try and, like, be aggressive here just yet. He's probably gonna have at least another 5 minutes or so before Terran really starts moving around. So this is apparently the moment where he adds on additional starports. I actually like the fact that he... Okay, there's a battlecruiser coming up. I actually really like the fact that he's building some of them in the top left. This is a very well-protected area, and usually Protosses will try and go for the throat. They will go for the main. Having some of that production already split, definitely not a bad idea. Alright, one sensor tower goes down, but KeeN had a backup sensor tower. Alright, so, carriers on the production tab. +3 attacks right here as well for KeeN coming up together with the weapon refit. That's gonna allow him the Yamato cannon. This is gonna be a very, very scary army here. Nope. It's gonna be a very, very scary army here for, for the both of them. KeeN already anticipating this base right over here. He's not gone for his own expo yet in that location. Man. I thought he was opening up supply earlier, but yeah, okay, now he decides to push forward here. A defensive tactical nuke being cast right here by that one ghost at the front. He misses it, careful! Oh my god, okay, he missed the Purification Nova right there. Almost. I mean, it's still a while away, but almost getting this nuke to land on top of that Protoss army. If you would have made the assumption it was there. Anyways, recall being used right now by DnS, bringing the majority of that army back home. And that Terran hit squad, super dead. Super dead. Alright. The thing is, though, that was the moment at which KeeN wanted to trade out some of his army. He wasn't really too keen on what he had anymore. He decides to... Sorry, I can't help it. He decides to now add on 4 battlecruisers. They're very supply heavy. If I'm not mistaken, they're 6 supply each. Very expensive. 400 minerals, 300 gas. Some of the absolute hardest units to get out. But once you get there, they are fantastic. That being said, this Protoss army is nothing to scoff at. Especially once the interceptors are out. They're extremely powerful. I would love to see him continuously upgrade, though. Like, we are missing some flyer attack... Or, sorry, flyer armor upgrades. You get him into Cybercore. Come on, DnS. I think you actually need him. Really bad. More Marines being sent to their deaths. Kinda sad, man. Yep. This man is brutal. I've never realized how aggressive KeeN is with his Marine Marauder movement. It's actually crazy. Like, he has sent... Well, let's see. 130 Marines, 33 Marauders out? I mean, it's a lot. Anyways. Terran doesn't have that much money, though. I'm liking the way that DnS is playing this quite a bit more. Okay. I'm liking the way that DnS is playing this a bit better, just because of the fact that he's got a good amount of, you know, economy here. Like, I don't know, Terrans in this sort of scenario always feel very happy to just kind of sit there. Oh my god. Alright. Who called in the fleet? Terrans usually are very happy to just kind of sit there on less bases. I feel like in a strategy game, that shouldn't be as good as it seems to be. Finally, he now secures another expo. He'll probably go for the 6 o'clock base pretty soon as well. But KeeN has been heavily outmined here for quite a while. Keep in mind, tactical junk here. Oh, tactical junk. Tactical jump is available for the Terran. More Marines. So he's going to be able to bring these units back home. He may very well need them, though, because this is a significant chunk of his supply. Like, this is 30 supply right here of the Terran. That's not part of the main army. Okay. Oh my god, when's he going to jump it back? Okay, here we go. He decides to jump in all of the battlecruisers right now on top of all of those Yamato guns. Oh my god, is he gonna land them? Ooh, they teleport away? Okay, one of the... I think that was only like 1 or 2 carriers going down right there. He decided to jump with all of the battlecruisers on top of that Protoss army. But KeeN already... I guess DnS realized right there that KeeN was doing that, so he decided to recall before the Yamato cannons could actually be queued up. That is the wombo combo that KeeN is trying to go for. But luckily, DnS recognized it and saw it in time. Still ended up losing a huge chunk of his force, though. Now Tempests are gonna come out. 5 at a time. Mothership being built. He's decided now to go for additional Cybercore upgrades, too, which I really, really like. A Raven is coming out. Okay. So KeeN is going a Viking Battlecruiser Ghost Liberator Tank. It's a bit of a mouthful. Not an easy army comp to micro, but definitely very potent. Whereas in the meantime, DnS is going mostly Skytles, but he still has a bunch of Disruptors here in the mix. And I guess there's still, you know, some glowy boys over here too. Archons are really actually good against Sky Terran as well, just because they deal splash damage. More one-way trips. Well, these guys actually do snipe a Tempest. Some Zealots here are being sent out as well, just to buy some time. Alright, Kettle Bruisers heading on over towards the top section of the map. I like it. Vikings flying on over in this direction too. The scan right now reveals exactly where that Protoss army is located. There's definitely gonna be a recall cooldown right now. Yeah, it's not available again already, so I think that the battlecruisers will be able to get rid of that Nexus right here at the 12 o'clock position pretty easily. Nice movement right here. Even though... Ooh, did he just lose all the Vikings? Ah, yeah. Okay, hold up. I need to go back. Sorry, I thought he was just using that army here for bait. So he's got 14 Vikings here. Okay, I'm gonna speed it up a little. This is where he has the drop in the main base. I thought he was just mostly using the Vikings right here for bait. Maybe he was also busy looking right there at the fight up north. So what happened to these bad boys? Okay, never mind. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Nah, I think it was pretty bad. Yeah, they're not being microed perfectly here, so a lot of them are... This is kind of the way in which I control my corruptors, you know? When you don't target fire, the Vikings will prioritize killing the interceptors instead. And that's how you lose 12 of them, apparently. Not great. I guess it opens up additional supply right now for KeeN to add on more battlecruisers, which is fair enough. Problem here for KeeN, though, is that he doesn't have that much money. He did kill a base of his opponent, sure. But DnS, still close to maxed out. Has a lot of gas remaining too, so he could always, like, just add on some additional, for example, Archons into the mix. Wouldn't mind if he decided to start knocking down the rocks here and go for the base down south. Okay. I actually think that Mr. KeeN may have gotten a little carried away with the Marine Marauder drops. Like, they seem free at this stage in the game because you mostly lack gas, but it adds up over time. Another tactical nuke is coming up. He is going to be able to remax once more at the very least on his ultimate army. But he does need to be a little cautious here because he cannot really afford to lose much more. Same for DnS. DnS has a bit more wiggle room, but not as much either. He can maybe make a couple carriers after they go down, but carriers are real expensive. This base over here is becoming quite important. Protoss right now taking a base down south. I would love for him to set up some static defense in this section of the map to buy some time. Anyways, battlecruisers have snuck their way towards the top right. For capital ships, they are rather slow. Problem is, there's nothing for them to gain over here. Like, absolutely nothing. Yeah, they can kill a Nexus, sure, but who cares? This base is not important anymore. There's only a little bit of mining, only 95 minerals there in total. More Marines here in the middle of the map. Okay, they do end up killing 2 Colossi, so maybe not the worst trade, but this is also the moment at which DnS apparently decides to pull the trigger. He engages that command center goes down. Battlecruisers are still preoccupied killing that base that doesn't really matter. Gold Expo also not that important. Like, DnS just sniped the base that the Terran was actually mining from, whereas KeeN just sniped the base that wasn't important. Like, it's 2 Nexi for 1 command center, but I actually think the 1 command center here was far more valuable just because of the potential mining. Like, he also didn't bring back his army, right? So, like, a whole chunk of the Terran units just ended up going down over here. That was, like, 30, 40 supply worth of Terran units that... That is a lot of battlecruisers, man. We have 13 battlecruisers over here. Okay, another defensive tactical nuke coming up. If that lands, it would be an absolute disaster here for the Protoss. I think he needed to bring these battlecruisers home a little bit quicker. Like, he's killing bases that are not important. Sorry, Nexus, I didn't mean to be a jerk, but, like, it really wasn't yeah, okay. So now we're forcing the recall instead. Are we gonna go for the Yamato guns? He's gonna try, but there's so much damage being done already. He decides to technically jump on out of there too. But KeeN certainly got the short end of that stick. I mean, that was an awful lot of Terran going down. A good chunk of his supply was just essentially wasted. He lost the only mining base that he had. DnS in the meantime opened up a lot of opportunity for him to start mining the base down south. And sure, he lost 3 of his own Nexi, but those honestly weren't really that important. Good movement right there by the Frenchman. Although this one, I don't really like. But overall, his army movement has been quite a bit superior. Alright. He's now overwhelming the base. Why, by the way, is the Mothership not really joined in? Like... Is he just using... Like, the Mothership is also extremely expensive and very supply, like, dense? Is that a good way to call it? I guess he's using it as, like, a secondary recall. Oh, I think that's what we're doing. So, Motherships have a skill called Mass Recall, okay. They have a skill called Mass Recall that allows them to recall units towards the Mothership. Normally, we see it being used offensively. Kind of like Arbiters in StarCraft 1. But I guess that DnS is actually using it as like a second way to get this army the hell out of here if it needs to leave. Yeah, so right now, Mass Recall is still on cooldown. It's a long... Yeah, look at that. That's cool. So he's now recalling towards the Mothership. The entire Protoss army shows up, and it's ready to defend once more. That is not a move we commonly see, and I actually really like it. So it's like a very expensive spellcaster. Normally, it's used primarily for its utility with the, you know, the offensive capabilities and then the cloaking and all that. But I actually really quite like what DnS was doing there. That's cool. Anyways, he's forced to now free his Archon over here and remake the fleet beacon. Apparently some damage was done in the main base. Terran, though, did secure the base up here. So this is actually a very important one. DnS hasn't seen that that base is acquired just yet, but he's now finally sending some units over in that direction. I think that is the obvious next base of operations where he needs to be headed. This is one of the few ways in which the Terran player can come back in a game like this. This is a scary army. So once again, I guess the Mothership, yep, it's being left behind. Sorry, Mothership. It's a little sad. You're not being bullied. You're just being used in a different way than what we normally see. We have a double recall. Alright. The battlecruisers, though, still very strong. Like, there's still a bunch of ground units over here available, too, right? That doesn't really help them out all too much. Okay, DnS decides to give up the base over here. That's a bit more of a ballsy move. He decides to trade a base for a base. I guess the thought being that he has still got a mining expansion, but he needs to save this one. Okay, Mass Recall once again being used right here on the Mothership defensively. I like it. It's really cool. Even though some of the units get caught in the main base. Ah, okay. Now he decides to plant down his own Nexus over here. That's one way of scouting that position out. And even though this is a curious way to close out a game, not as aggressive as we normally see, I'm pretty sure that DnS is slowly but surely choking out his opponent here. Okay, well, here we go. He decides to go in for what seems to be the killer move. That EMP was huge, though, so a lot of those Protoss units are very, very low. Yamato cannons being used right here on as many of the units as he possibly can. Battery overcharge here and shield batteries in general helping out a ton. KeeN is going for what seems to be a bit of a desperation move. Mothership comes in, too, decides to use its Time Warp right over here. GG is cold as DnS obtains the victory.